Is absolutely happening in this film. The filmmaker, Miles Joris-Peyrafitte, made a terrific short called As a Friend that this film is based on, but this is his feature directorial debut. He wrote this film, he directed it, and he's here with us tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, Miles Joris-Peyrafitte.
So thank you everyone for coming. This is really a deeply crazy experience for all of us who are a part of this. We wrapped shooting on October 10th and didn't think we would get in the festival even if we hadn't finished that late. So to be here is really, really fantastic. So obviously I think it's the thing I want to thank everybody who's here, who was a part of the film. It's like, there's a lot of us. So thank you guys, and I really hope you enjoyed the film. We worked really hard on it.
And just a couple things, Miles, what we got
For the Q&A, we're going to bring out, obviously, Owen Campbell, Jack. Down here who cuts the movie incredibly fast. She's a monster. She's incredible. There, now you look at Tail David in DC. And Joseph producer, Sean Burke, producer, Justin Rothrop, and Brent Siebel.
Okay, we're going to open this up for a Q&A for a bit in a second. I just want to point out something. Since I saw this film the first time, and now it has credits, and I've met you, I realized besides writing it and directing it, you're in it and you're responsible for lots of the music. That's pretty friggin' cool. So, congratulations.
Just really quickly, also Madison Harrison, who wrote the film with me,
So if anyone has any questions for Miles or anyone up here, just raise your hand, I'll call on you. Try to speak as loudly as possible, because it's a big room, but I'll repeat the question if need be. Anyone? Sure, this lady right here.
Okay, in the third clip from the last part of the scene where they were in the woods, was that the father running through the woods?
Her question was, in the third clip, in the woods, was that the father running through the woods?
Yeah, it was right before the gunshot. There was a guy running through the woods in blue jeans. Was that the father? And plus, I gotta tell the father, you were a great dick.
Thank you, I'm available. I think for your first question, probably whatever you came up with is better than what I'll say, so I'll leave it at that. But he is a great dick. So you're right.
So Charlie Heaton, who played Mark, couldn't be here, right? So we miss him.
Yeah, he's shooting a big show and, you know, doing his thing. He's very, very sad he couldn't come, and also wanted us to thank all of you for coming here and supporting the film.
Okay, this lady right here?
I was really drawn to the nature of the relationship between the three friends and how fluid it was and how rooted in what felt like a very pure love for one another. I'm curious what it was like to write those relationships and what it was like to play them.
Did you all hear that? Because she sounded like she was pretty loud. Love that.
Project very well.
I mean, in terms of writing those relationships, I mean, they are very real relationships. It is something that's sort of rooted. Miles and I grew up together, and while it's not autobiographical, there are obviously elements of you know, especially at that age, sort of figuring out what you're all about, what the people who are around you are all about, and sort of how that makes sense. So I think it's rooted in something very real. So I'm glad you appreciated that.
Also to add on to that, I think that writing those kinds of relationships really only goes so far. You know, obviously when you're writing them, you dream about having people who can actually embody them with that kind of fluidity and that kind of passion. And we got ridiculously lucky, I think, in the cast that we got. Really became a unit and became the friendship and sort of started to embody that thing. And that was, I mean, the most unbelievable thing to watch, definitely.
To the lady on the aisle there.
Hi. This movie was so incredible. It touched on a lot of like really deep emotional things. What was the most difficult part to both write and direct and act for like all of you?
Her question was, with all the emotional stuff in this movie, what was the most difficult thing to write, direct, and act? So, I guess we're going to start with act. Go ahead, Amanda.
All right. I think the most difficult thing to act for me was some of the interrogation scenes, just because it felt a little too real sometimes. And I guess when you're an actor, you sort of have to believe in what you're saying. And so sometimes I would feel like, man, Charlie's dead. That really sucks. So I think that was definitely the most difficult for me.
That's how good she is.
Owen, do you want to add to that?
I'm gonna take a second to think about my answer.
Writing and directing?
I'm not sure. I think writing it, again, it was kind of going back to the relationship. That was part of the most difficult thing. Is for me, I always felt like, especially with coming of age films, which I don't really think this is, there's a tendency to belittle the people who are going through it or condescend in a way through a lot of different things. For me, and Madison, I think you can speak for yourself fully. Yeah, the most difficult thing was to write a story and try and direct a story that was not coming from a place of nostalgia, that wasn't coming from a place of looking at youth with distance, but instead trying to live within what that feels like for a kid, or what that feels like for an adult, or what that feels like for somebody who's going through these emotions. So I think that there wasn't really a scene or anything that was more difficult than the other. It was really trying to maintain that perspective on the story.
Yeah, nailed it, dude. Yeah, I mean, right. It's a very unsatisfactory answer, but the answer is, how do you make it real? How do you make it something that comes from somewhere that's not just, right, trying to get a reaction, but trying to provoke a thought, or, you know, to get something deeper than a visceral feeling, which are always good, you know, it's never a bad thing, but if that's all that you have, you know, you can feel like you're missing something. So that was sort of the thing.
Sure.
I just want to add that the challenge, which is a really interesting question, this is the first time that I've seen the film, which it is unbelievable, and performances are always. What was so interesting doing the film was there was a title of As You Are, which always kind of confused me. I mean, I didn't really know the Kurt Cobain song, and it never really occurred to me that it really had... No. Lawrence Welk was my I'm just but what we've been talking about actually all week, and congratulating Miles and talking about how wonderful a director he was, and how when we came to set, it was really kind of just a very fluid thing, and really kind of, he created an environment where there was no judgment. And it occurred to me as I was watching this that we really all were, there was no judgment on character, and every character was so present and so real and so true, and that really became the challenge of when I was not even knowing that I was doing it then, but the challenge became about being present, and that there was no judgment on what Tom was about, which was pretty desperate and horrible. But he had no judgment on it, so then I could have no judgment on it, which made it more interesting to play. Yeah.
Another challenge, I think, of the story is often when you do a coming-of-age story, I think the perspective of the kids on the parents is those assholes, or, you know, like, wah, 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 the peanuts. And in this case, I felt like you both made characters that were striving and failing, but striving to be human. And where there were places where, like, you know, let's make sure these people are three-dimensional. You know, Miles was extremely open to that collaboration, and also created such an atmosphere of safety for everyone that I think it was, there was no separation behind and in front of the camera. The whole crew was the cast. Everybody was really one, telling the same story, and that's just great. It's the most awesome place to be, so.
Yeah, there's a gentleman, but
what camera did you shoot it on? What anamorphic lenses did you use? And what are the next steps for the film?
I heard, what camera did you shoot it on?
I was the cinematographer. We shot on the. 6K, so lots of resolution, and we found these old, beautiful old Hawk anamorphic lenses from the early 90s when the film was set. Just like the video camera, as well as a high-8 camera from 93. The lenses were from the early 90s. So yeah, we wanted that softer quality. You know, we didn't want it to be too clean, and we just liked the way that it feels like the lenses have a lot of nice emotion to them, which lend themselves to the memories of the characters and the flashbacks. What was there a third question?
Oh, what are the next steps for the film?
If there's buyers in the room, I think I can answer that question myself.
Where are you guys at in the post-production process?
Well, now, you know, I feel like this has been. No, there's a lot of. What's next is very difficult to answer because obviously everyone comes here with that dream that everyone has. For me, and I think for the rest of us, being here and having a Sundance audience here, and being able to like consider ourselves part of that community in a way is literally more than I could ever ask for. So I'm trying not to get too greedy. That said, if you know someone.
Sure. And the guy with the hat.
How you doing? Love the movie. Met y'all a few days ago.
Oh yeah.
What's up, man? So I have like a three-part question for you. I'm trying to make it short. I have like one question for you too. So my first question for you, did y'all actually shoot on VHS? Second question is, why did y'all decide to make Sarah's parents? I'm assuming they're both white, but obviously she's biracial. And third question is, describe what the movie meant for like people who are maybe are trying to figure out their sexual identity. Because obviously two characters, you can't really put them in the box. You can't really say, oh, they're homosexual or they're bisexual. They're just trying to discover identity. So how do you feel like the film describes sexual identity? And for Amandla, this movie inspired you to reveal what you did to the public about a month ago. I don't gotta say that loud, but so.
Yeah, those are great questions, and it's a lot. Yeah, do you want to? You recap them?
What was the first one?
The first one?
Oh yeah, that is. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just it was a high-8 camera.
Okay.
So like from that era, kind of like VHS, but before digital. So all that weird artifacts, we like that stuff. And yeah, every time you played it back, it got a little worse. The editors were freaking out.
Which just, I think it's worth saying because Caleb was like incredibly, when we started talking about the film, I was very scared to bring up the fact that I wanted to try and shoot all the interrogation stuff on high 8, because I'd seen his stuff and it was so beautiful and so rich and everything. And then the more we started talking about it, the more that kind of, we realized that was a tool for us of telling the story that was moving through time and moving through characters' perspectives on things, was actually being able to change aspect ratio and being able to jump, vertically and really change the space that they're in.
And the second question was about the choice for Sarah's parents.
Is that for me or for me?
That's for you, because you.
Yeah.
Sort of the choice behind that was sort of trying to find, there's a part in the movie when the detective asks, why do you hang out with these kids? And that was something that, writing it, I was sort of thinking about, like, what's this thing that makes her feel different? And I thought that the idea of her being adopted could create this sense of
that they're living in a place and a culture, 90s in upstate New York, not the most progressive place, a little bit uncomfortable. But what that's kind of coming out of is this like Reaganification, this like reinstallment of family values and of pastels and all these things, where masculinity is determined by strength and by all of these kind of archetypes, and and for
Going hunting.
yeah, all of these kinds of things, and that's where they find themselves at the center of, And for me, and I think Madison, and I think most of us who worked on this film, it's not a story about a kid who's struggling with being gay, or another kid who just realizes he's straight, or any of those things. It's really about kids not having the room to discover those things for themselves and what that can lead to. So that it was a very conscious choice, and every step of the way we were trying to make sure that we weren't pushing the audience too much in one direction and making assumptions about them.
So sadly, I've been told that we're out of time, but before we do wrap it up, I'm just wondering if you have anything you want to say to finalize this.
So thank you so much. Really,